Hey y'all, it's Stephen Van Kampen-Lewis here at the start of June actually, and Hunter and I are going to repot a couple of Cattleyas today. One of them is Cattleya nobilior that's sort of overgrown its mount, so I am going to repot that into a pot, which is how I like to grow mine. And then I've got a Cattleya Elegans that's originally from Sunset Valley Orchids, and it is purpurata by Tigrina, I believe, and it is overgrown a basket, so I'm going to get that into a pot as well. And my assistant here, Pikachu, aka Hunter, is going to help me out, and we're gonna get started. All right, so we are going to start with the overgrown Cattleya nobilior. So this Cattleya nobilior, as you can see, has totally overgrown its mount, and it has new roots coming out. They are quite a bit longer than I would prefer to repot, but that's just where we're at right now in this. And then I'm going to get it into this pot here. I've actually got two. This pot is probably a little large for this particular plant, but not too much. I'm not too worried about it. And the reason is that, nobilior for me grows really fast and just kind of rambles all over the place. So I'm not too worried about it filling the pot. Also, I'll probably end up, well, I'll show you in a sec, but I won't bring the media level all the way to the top. I'll probably keep it about halfway down. So that is also something you can do if you are over potting a plant, is to have less media in there to sort of let it dry out a little more quickly. Scalpel. Thank you, Assistant Pikachu. So the first thing that we want to do, you can see I got this from my friend Jean. She got rid of most of her collection, and you can see she got an award for this one, a ribbon award, many years ago. But what we're just going to do is come through and untangle a bit. So what I'm left here is a pretty large plant, actually. So maybe, actually that is a pretty good size for this one. So unfortunately a lot of these roots will end up dying, but I still need them to support the plant. So I'm not going to cut them off entirely, but I will trim them, which will help get them into the pot a little more easily. Also, it'll give me a look at the inside of the roots. So now I can look at a cross section here and see that I would say a little more than half of these roots are still alive. So that's good. I don't need to get too crazy with the chopping. Looks like I sprayed this with spinosad. Unfortunately, this was kind of a neglected plant, so it's got some mealies on it and some scale, but not too bad. I sprayed this with spinosad when I got it a couple weeks ago, and then I'll probably spray it again. It looks like some of these mealies, and so these mealies are still alive. So after I pot this up, I'll hit this with either spinosad again, or probably actually a systemic. Take rid of the scale and the mealies. Not too bad though. So let's put this plant aside after I cut a few more of these older roots off. Take a look at the pot itself. So there's two of these. Of course, I'm going to put the Elegans in that one here in a moment. As you've seen in many of my other videos, I like these eco-web, epi-web kind of things. It's recycled plastic. It's pretty hard actually, so it's got some squish to it, but it's plastic, so it holds up well. In fact, for a really long time. So in this case, I'm just going to use this to kind of block the drain hole, so a little bit, so the water still gets through. but I can put media in here, which, as you know, will be large grade Orchiata bark. I'll put a little bit in the bottom here. This will prevent it from falling through over time. And then I'll put the plant in, and then I'll figure out how I want to secure it. So I don't know if you saw that, but I bent this. That's never good. See if I can free up some space here. So that part is unnecessary. Did it again. So how do we want to do this? So you can see this growth here is bent quite a bit. I'm not entirely sure if that will come back nicely or not. In fact, I was actually considering chopping it off because you can see if I cut this part off here, this old bloom spike, and then this growth, I would actually have a nice pot for this. But chopping off a new growth with new roots coming out is not necessarily a great strategy. It's actually not that terrible either. So. But I think I'll let this go. If this for some reason doesn't do well and this new growth starts to die off, then I'll just cut it and be done with it. I'm not too worried about it. I'm going to add a little bit more bark, especially around the new roots, since that's I want the humidity to stay high for there. I don't know. So this is a pot stake. So what you do is you clip it to the side of the pot here, and it helps to hold your plants in place. I'm going to grab one of these larger ones. Let's see if that'll work. So I tried to use one of these pot clips. Unfortunately, the pot clips go across, and since I've only filled this about halfway with the media, it's not going to work. But I think it's a large enough plant and it's low enough in the pot that it's not going to blow around in the wind. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to leave it the way it is. No pot clip, no zip ties, and I think it'll be fine. Finally, of course, I need a label for this one. So I've got the label. I'm going to get it in here and get this over to its new home. All right. So my next plant is here, and this is the Cattleya Elegans. You can see that I'm going to do some trimming. This is another plant that has seen better days and can use some TLC, but it's huge. It's a huge plant. So I need to remove this and get it into the pot over here. And Grayson, my other Pokemon here, is going to help me out as well. And I've had to move this camera up a little bit because this plant is pretty big, but I'm going to bring it back down a little bit So you can see how I'm going to clean up this sunburn here. And then I'm actually going to cut off a new growth down at the bottom, which is curling underneath the whole thing. And let's get started. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this leaf here. Easy peasy. Now the other tricky part for this one is you can see it's walked out of the pot. So Jean, I got this from my friend Jean, and you know she hasn't been super excited about orchids lately, so she kind of let this one go. And you can see that one of the most recent growths is kind of here and stubby, but then this other one is here. And it's doing okay. But then I actually just noticed that I have this weird looking thing here. Right, so it's not very healthy. It's growing underneath. It's growing the wrong direction, but there's roots coming out. So it's kind of a good thing and a bad thing. So the good thing are the roots. The bad thing is the growth itself. So the wonky new growth is gone, and that losing that particular bit of plant will sort of encourage it to grow a new growth. And then what I need to do now is actually cut this pot off of the rest of the plant. So I'm going to get started on that, and let's listen to some music. So you can see I've clipped most of these roots off. I still have some of the old ones back here. The newer ones have been clipped. So the newer ones from last year have been clipped, and you can see these are all alive. A lot of these will form new root tips. So cutting these guys at this stage is not so bad. You can see the plant is in active root growth here. So these new roots are the ones that I need to be thinking about as I repot, and are the ones that will get this plant to its next stage, which will be in this pot here. So similar to the last one, I'm going to use one of these eco webs in here to block the drainage a little bit. But I think what I'm going to do for this one actually is I'm going to use my handy dandy trusty zip ties here and get them ready for this very large plant. And what I'll do so you can see how that's pressed up against there. When I cinch this down, it's not going to affect the epi web. And what I'll do is I'll get another one attached here as well. I'm going to add some media in here, and then I'm going to put the plant in, and then I'm going to zip tie it together. Hey, if you found this video helpful, please click this little button down here on the bottom right. And don't feel obligated to, but if you feel like this was worth $1 or $2, please click that and add $1 or $2. That will really go a long way to me helping to get a greenhouse right over here, as well as head over to Brazil for an orchid trip in 2024. So all of your orchid donations will go to orchid causes for which I can make additional videos. And as always, thank you very much. So now I'm going to get this zip tie in place. Just to kind of hold it. I'm not going to cinch it down quite yet. I'm going to add more media. Now what I'm going to do is there's a lot of air space in here, so I'm going to kind of tap this down. And gently push these into the spaces because I don't want a whole lot of air space. Okay, so that's looking good right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to zip tie this down. I'm going to cinch it down. So let's say even if this pot falls over, it'll still be in the same spot, roughly. And that just helps to keep things in position. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a stake to several of these, and then I'm going to zip tie them in. All right, and that's most of the way done. I'm going to add a name tag for this here in a sec, but I do want to say, I like to say, or I like to talk a lot about how I typically don't cut the roots on my pots, and I just simply put them into a larger pot. But sometimes you really do need to get pretty physical and manually chop a lot of roots. And honestly, I think one of the defining characteristics between a long-time orchid grower and someone who hasn't been doing it for very long, and you can see it on a lot of YouTube videos, is the long-time orchid growers just get in there and just chop. There's a lot of crunching sounds, a lot of sort of cringe-worthy sounds, a lot of cutting, and you guys should take notice of that when you're watching other YouTubers. The experienced growers are just hacking and slicing and cutting, and their plants come back really nicely. And the less experienced growers are sort of delicate, and they're worried about the plants. And so just keep that in mind when you're taking advice from the different folks on YouTube. And that's it. This is ultra secure. There's going to be no wobbling in the pot. And of course, I'll do update videos for this one and the nobilior, and even that Ludemaniana that I repotted a few weeks ago. Also, there are some bug issues, so I'm going to hit this pretty hard with some insecticidal soap today to cure the mealies and the scale. But that's about it. Otherwise it's a large, robust plant, and I'm excited to show you blooms on this in the very near future. Anyway, have a great weekend. Bye.
Don't forget to hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe. Bye, guys!